The truth is often hard to find. There's usually one side, the other side, and then the actual truth. People often contradict each other and try to paint themselves in the most flattering light possible. The more people you add to the situation, the messier it can get. This isn't just limited to real life. It's happened in a few films as well, such as 1995's The Usual Suspects and 2014's Gone Girl. The first major film occurrence of this was in 1950's Rashomon by Akira Kurosawa, and the storytelling method is called the Rashomon effect. I wonder how they came up with the name. The Rashomon effect is a storytelling method where individuals give contradictory descriptions of an event. It's generally used to describe how unreliable eyewitnesses can be. In the case of Rashomon, we have 4 people giving different retellings of the murder of a samurai in the forest. Their retellings are probably different than you'd expect, so let's get into it. The film takes place in the Heian era, which means it's somewhere between the years 794 and 1185. The film opens with torrential downpour. There's a woodcutter and a priest sitting under Rashomon's city gate when a commoner joins them so he can escape the rain. They begin telling the commoner how disturbed they were about an assault and murder that took place 3 days earlier. The 3 people involved, a bandit, a samurai, and the samurai's wife, all gave different stories as to what happened, which doesn't sound too strange at first, but here's where things start to get complicated. None of them claim that they're innocent. In fact, in each story they indicate that they committed the murder themselves and that they did it all alone. The woodcutter briefly explains what he witnessed. He'd been out in the forest looking for wood, which is a great place to find it, by the way, when he first found a woman's hat, then a samurai's cap, cut rope, which was used to bind the samurai. Then he found an amulet before finding the body. Terrified, he ran to notify the authorities. The priest claims that he saw the samurai traveling with his wife the day of the murder. They were both summoned to court, where another witness presented a captured bandit named Tajumaru, who claimed he followed the couple through the forest. Now we get to hear Tajumaru's side of things. He was sleeping in the woods when he first saw the samurai traveling with his wife. After one glimpse of the wife, he knew he wanted her, so he devised a plan. He lured the samurai off the trail by telling him he found a pile of swords and mirrors, and that he would sell them to him for very cheap. I think we've all fallen for that one before.
Hey, do you want to come back to my place?
Look, I'm sorry, but I'm just not interested.
But wait, I have a bunch of swords and mirrors.
I lost a kidney, but that's another story. Once they were in the woods, Tajumaru knocked the samurai unconscious and tied him to a tree. He then told his wife that he was hurt and needed help. When they got back into the woods, Tajumaru tried to assault her, and she tried to defend herself with an expensive dagger. She was quickly overpowered before being seduced by the bandit. Ashamed, she asked Tajumaru to duel her husband to the death, so she wouldn't have to carry the guilt of 2 men knowing her dishonor. He frees the samurai, and they have an honorable and very skillful duel. In the end, Tajumaru is the superior fighter and slays the samurai. His wife then flees in terror. At the end of his testimony, they ask him what happened to the expensive dagger, and he says he forgot about it, which he regrets since it would have been worth a lot of money. Now, I'm sure the bandit is a really trustworthy person, but it's time to hear the wife's side of things. She claims that Tajumaru forced himself on her and left immediately after. Once she recovered, she ran to her husband, used the dagger to cut the ropes off of him, and began asking for forgiveness. Which seems a little backwards to me, seeing as she didn't really do anything. But anyways, she was begging her husband for forgiveness and was met with nothing but a cold stare. She begged him to kill her so she wouldn't have to live with the shame, but he continued to stare at her coldly. She became so distressed that she fainted while standing over him with the dagger. When she awoke, her husband was dead and the dagger was sticking out of his chest. She then wandered aimlessly through the forest before coming to a pond where she tried to drown herself, but ultimately failed. Well, I guess that's that really. We heard from the 2 living parties, and it's not like you can really ask the dead what happened. There's a ghost over there. I guess you can talk to ghosts if you have a medium, and that's what they did in the court. The samurai spirit explains his side of things. He said that after the assault, the bandit asked the wife to travel with him, and she said she would as long as he killed her husband, so she wouldn't have to live with the shame of being with 2 men. He was shocked and grabbed her. He decided to let the samurai choose her fate. He could let her go or kill her. She broke free and Tajumaru chased after her. After failing to recapture her, Tajumaru apologizes to the samurai, frees him, and leaves. Humiliated, the samurai plunges his wife's dagger into his chest. Later, he felt someone remove the dagger, but he couldn't tell who it was. Well, I guess now we're done. We heard 3 very conflicting stories from each party involved, where each one actually claimed to be the killer. With no one left to ask, I guess we'll never really know the truth of what happened. The woodcutter's over there. Now we're back to Rashomon Gate with the woodcutter, priest, and commoner. The woodcutter claims to have witnessed both the assault and the murder, but didn't want to get involved in the trial. According to him, all 3 stories are false. The woodcutter says that Tajumaru begged the samurai's wife to marry him after the assault. She refused and freed her husband in hopes that he would kill Tajumaru for what he did. Instead, he refused to fight, saying that he wouldn't risk his life fighting for a spoiled woman. The 2 consistent things throughout this story are that the samurai gets killed and that he's a real jerk. The wife criticizes both men, calling them cowards. Tajumaru should have slain the samurai so he could have her, and the samurai should have slain Tajumaru to defend his own honor. What proceeds is the sloppiest, probably most realistic sword fight I've seen in film. It's really fantastic. Let's take a quick look at it. I'll be honest and say this is probably how I'd act in a sword fight. Tajumaru ends up winning the duel by pure luck, and the wife flees. Tajumaru can't catch her due to an injury, so he takes the samurai's sword and limps away. Now, the woodcutter's story's cut off here by the sound of a crying baby at the gate. They discover it had been abandoned in a basket with nothing but a kimono and an amulet. The commoner steals both from the infant. The woodcutter tries to stop him, but is quickly overpowered. The commoner calls him a hypocrite, saying the only reason he didn't testify at the trial is because he's the one who stole the valuable dagger from the crime scene. He then leaves with the stolen items, stating that all men are motivated by self-interest. After the commoner is gone, the woodcutter tries to take the baby away from the priest, who won't let him touch it. He says his experiences at the trial in Rashomon Gate have destroyed his faith in humanity. The woodcutter explains that he'll raise the child. He already has 6 of his own, so another wouldn't make a big difference. This paints the woodcutter in a different light and restores the priest's faith in humanity. As the woodcutter leaves with the child, the rain stops, the clouds part, and the sun comes out. What I find really interesting with this film is that they never tell you which story is the real one. I feel like a film made today would spell it out and say exactly which person was telling the truth. We don't even know if the woodcutter has kids. He could just be saving face. Apparently during production, the actors kept approaching Kurosawa asking for the truth, but he wanted the film to be an exploration of multiple realities rather than an exposition of a particular truth. On top of being a great film, Rashomon stands out among Japanese cinema as the first Japanese film to receive international acclaim. It won the Golden Lion Award at the Venice Film Festival in 1951, causing the rest of the world to start taking Japanese cinema more seriously. I can highly recommend checking out Rashomon. Maybe you'll notice some film techniques that you're familiar with. The only question I really have about the film is, what happened to that pile of swords and mirrors?